Respected guests, ladies and gentlemen, I, Dr. Ulupi Bora, a distinguished fellow at St. Joe's, welcome you to the first annual Trident Lecture 2025, which will become an annual feature. May I now take the honor to request DG St. Joe's, Major General Dr. Ashok Kumar, VSM, retired, to deliver the opening address and set the tone for today's proceedings.
Respected Chief of Defence Staff General Anil Chauhan, SESC Air Marshal Ashutosh Dikshit, DCITS Dot, General Bipul Singhal, officers from all the three services, paramilitary forces, national security, industry. Today is a red letter day in the history of Center for Joint Warfare Studies. This is reflection of the adulthood, and the responsibility on our shoulders actually increases because of the 7th August 2007 conceived this annual lecture with the support of headquarter I. But we have a major event coming up in form of Run Samvad, focusing on warfare and war fighting, which is being conducted on 26th and 27th August 25 at Army War College, Mau. This year it is being done by Army in collaboration with St. Joe's, and thereafter next year it will be by the Air Force, and thereafter Navy, and then this turn will be repeated. We hope that this Run Samvad will be something, a world level event in this 3 years time, during which it will take its real shape. As we complete our 18 years of journey, we took a stock of where we have reached. While we have made substantial progress in multiple domains by our predecessors, discourse of various think tanks in India and the world over, majority of them focus on geopolitical issues, and it is rightly so given the churn which is going through the world, especially in these days. We have realigned our focus more on tri-services, war fighting, employment of niche technologies in war fighting, and all future battle-related issues. Not that we have left the geopolitical and geoeconomic issues altogether, but definitely in our overall structure, we have reduced that content and focused more on war and war fighting. So today, we are all going to be lucky to be hearing three legendary senior officers, where the CDS will be setting the tone, speaking on the shaping of the future battle space, glimpses of which you would have seen during Operation Sindoor, and more preparations are in the pipeline. You will also see Jan Singhal speaking on as to how the ancient statecraft can be used for modern war fighting, and then CISC will finally give you out what is the urgency of tri-services reforms, because now we are in a time era where everything has to be done in mission mode. So with this note, I
Thank you, sir. We are all aware that our Chief of Defense Staff has given a renewed focus and enhanced impetus to future war fighting, which has given the country an unprecedented success during Operation Sindoor. We now invite our chief guest, the CDS, General Anil Chauhan, to deliver the keynote address on the theme Dominating the Future Battle Space.
Air Marshal Ashutosh Dixit, assist. Major Ashok Kumar, DG Sandos, officers from the three services. And warfare. So this has been my attempt, and I must compliment theme for his annual Trident lecture, the first one happening today, dominating the future battle space. I think as military commanders, our job is force generation and force application. When we talk about force generation, we must consider uh, various kinds of threats to the nation, and then appropriate weapons and systems and platforms which are required, and then appropriate doctrines have to be developed for that. And force application is not only in kinetic but also in a non-kinetic domain. So these two things are important, and uh, there is a lot amount of thought and preparation required for both these things, force generation and force applications, and that's the job of the officers of the armed forces. So, as a military man who's been putting on a uniform for past 44 years, I think it's my job to talk about warfare and future warfare and align the three services. And General Ashok has asked me to talk about the future battle space. The topic has three essential elements. First is domination. It's both physical as well as an abstract concept, actually. When you talk about domination in abstract concept, it's part of human nature. And that's the generation of all conflicts, all essential conflicts, because of this nature of a human being to dominate. It also lies in the psychological to how you perceive victories, etc. It's also a concept in the physical domain, whereas you apply actually force, it has got an effect, etc. That is the battle space. It's we all know it's a place where two adversaries or two belligerents actually meet, and the outcome of these battlefields are of a evolving nature. You must have heard right from mythological to Kalinga, Palasi, Panipat, 1971, whole of East Pakistan, and today in Operation Sindoor, we see the expanse of that battle space, right from maybe Karachi till Noor Khan, not only along the borders but also in depth across borders. So this is a evolving and an expanding kind of a concept, battle space, and we will be talking about it. And the third essential element of this particular topic is future. And I'll talk about future also. And future, as you all know, is slightly perilous to actually debate and discuss. It's difficult. And when we talk about future and add warfare to it, and warfare we all know is very unpredictable. So talking about future warfare is rather difficult. And because it doesn't follow a very linear kind of a path. So what I'll try and do is what we can see in near future. What are the major trends in future warfare? So I'll be talking about all these three. And I think it's also important to debate all this in the Indian context. We can't be talking of context. The central framework could be based on global trends, but this all must relate to Indian conditions, Indian geography, Indian adversary, uh, on both the border, LC, disputed areas, etc. Uh, so the first major trend that we see in future is propensity of nations to use force. This is increasing day by day, and it's because war and politics has got a close connect, and we all know this. I don't have to say it. Clausewitz said it long that war is a continuation of politics, means, and they're closely related. War defines or tries to achieve the political purpose of for which the nations go to war. And what happens in earlier days, probably war was declared war, longish wars would ruin economy, it was disastrous for people, etc. No longer so. Today we have short wars, and like we have seen in Sindhu, very, very precision kind of strikes. You are able to achieve your political objectives much faster. If you have such kind of war, then obviously the propensity of a nation to use force for achievement of political aims without actually declaring that formal kind of war would be more. So this would happen. So you will find increasingly nations using force for attainment of their political objectives, and largely this will happen without actually declaring formal wars. The second trend which we will see is emerging, which is already there, the lack of distinction between war and peace. Modern conflicts blur this line between wartime and peacetime activities, and with persistence and unconventional challenges. We all know terror. Terror has been there. It's a slow process, a slow grind, and it's very difficult to actually eliminate the terrorism, root of terrorism completely. And we have seen that examples in the northeast and in Kashmir. It simmers, and the violence level may be low. And even if we achieve an total absence of violence, that really doesn't mean that there's a presence, 100% presence of peace. So these are two different kind of things. If you and terrorism only just one thing. You can look at drugs, illegal immigration, etc., for which a state has to be prepared to respond on a daily kind of basis. vector control. World War II, we have this envelopment, turning movement, double envelopment, deception, attacking along a narrow front, generating faster tempo during operations. They were all part of strategies which made you win a war. Today, technology is replacing both, gradually replacing both mass as well as strategy. You have unmanned systems, MUMT, and MUMT, robotics, auto kill chains have replaced human mass and technology, and is driving strategy. And what is actually strategy is got left behind slightly. That's my personal view. And now strategy is taken a defensive kind of an role because of this gradual assault of technology onto strategy. And you find strategy like you were talking about demassification of the battlefield. You're talking about camouflage and concealment. You're talking about discarding of bigger platforms. You're focusing on more on dispersal. That's a strategy. So these are all defensive aspects, whereas strategy is actually focusing on offensive aspects. Something like net-centric operations, tempo of operations should be high. It's introducing weapons which are today's that faster tempo, hypersonic weapons, etc. So automatic kill chains we are talking about. So technology probably has taken a march over strategy, and that we will see. And there are, of course, many more trends how technology is shaping warfare. Various talks have talked about the third evolution in military affair, which I've found as kind of convergence, which converges all types of warfare together. So I've spoken about all this in the past. I'll not repeat the importance of technology. The second important thing about today's talk is about battle space. So, as modern conflict evolves beyond traditional arenas, the future battle space is rapidly transcending the traditional triad of land, sea, and air domains, expanding into complex and interlinked domains like space, cyber, cognitive, and other such kind of domains. Let's look at these traditional domains, how they are changing actually. A war on land is no longer, does not happen in very large open spaces that happened during, say, Barbarossa or North African campaign, where you could carry out maneuver. But today, warfare, land warfare is happening at very complex urban terrain. Because most of the global population has shifted onto cities, urbanization has taken place. So you're finding this very, very complex urban terrain and also accompanied with subterranean kind of a terrain, which you're seeing in Gaza. Another adversary is also quite fond of going subterranean and locating it. So this is how warfare is now proceeding. And for this, fighting this kind of a warfare, probably you'll have a different set of technology, different kind of platforms. So things like tanks, etc., would be things of the past. Precision would appear, will be of importance in such kind of a terrain rather than mass use of artillery. So like the Russians used to say, the artillery as a goddess of war, and there's the preponderance of artillery for attainment of objectives during warfare. No longer so. Because of this complex nature of terrain, what you will require probably is through see-through radars, radars which can see through foliage or dense urban landscape. What you will require is drones which can actually navigate this complex arena of this urban landscape tomorrow. So this is how warfare on land is changing. Let's look at the maritime domain. Over here you find this, earlier we thought about maritime domain awareness. Seas are vast. This was a difficult proposition, and to do this, we had to take recourse to satellites, satellite imageries, and mail and hail RPAs, LRMR aircraft. It could fly long and carry out surveillance. MDA was always important as part of maritime warfare. But today, where have we shifted on? We have shifted to UDA, under domain, auto domain awareness. So for which we are having more reliance on unmanned kind of systems. And we are now talking even about seabed warfare, for which different kind of technology and specialization will be required. So even in the maritime domain, the battle space has not remained the same. It is again expanded differently. Again, look at airspace. Traditionally, we talked about airspace about 20 kilometers or so where fighter aircraft would operate. No longer so, because we've seen that, on the top side of this 20 kilometers, you find this almost merging with near space. That's almost reaching about 100 kilometers. That is because of advent of technologies like HAPS, balloons which go in altitude, hypersonics, and some of the ballistic missiles have that. They come from top. So unless you are able to track those systems, you'll not be able to hit those systems. So this near space and airspace is merging. And Also, a different kind of a trend which we are noticing is because of this proliferation of large amount of drones and loiter ammunition, which are exploiting the extreme lower end of this airspace spectrum, say below 200 or 300 meters. So over there, this mass of this drones, etc., is happening, which will hamper the airspace management. So there is one more trend which we'll have to take into account. So this was all about what's happening in the traditional battle space. If you now look at space, it's evolved over a period of time. These are now the new domains, evolving into critical domain for projecting national power and securing national interest. Space, as you know, is expanding always. It's ever expanding. So, and so is the battle space in space. So today, space communication involves a network of satellites in different kind of orbits. So we're talking about not geostationary orbits today, but we're talking about low Earth orbits. We're talking about medium Earth orbits, and we are talking about highly elliptical orbits, which provide you a combination of both geostationary orbits. We are even talking the space could be expanded to lunar orbits tomorrow, and cislunar orbit. That means the whole space between Moon and us could be a battle of contestations in future. And if we have to do that, maintain surveillance, we talk some terms of space situational awareness. Imagine the vast space for which you'll have to keep a surveillance on, because this is where your assets will be there, which will help you actually in war fighting on ground. So I firmly believe that the nation that achieves dominance in integrating all the space capabilities with multi-domain operations is likely to possess a decisive edge in future warfare. Let's look at cyber space, which we thought was a small segment, but today cyber is also expanded, maybe I could say, into the digital domain, which is also different than cyber and traditional space, which I just spoken about. Inter-satellite links, uploading, downloading stations. So this also is one more segment in which cyber is expanding into, and obviously, when we talk about the digital domain, it's also expanding into the information domain, a combination of both this. And when we're talking about its expansion into the information domain, then we're talking about perception management and cognitive warfare being somewhere related to cyberspace and cyber warfare. So this, I think, is the changing dimension of cyber. Next is electromagnetic spectrum, actually. So essentially, when we learned as young officers about electromagnetic spectrum, we could talk about just two things, radios and radars, people line of sight and some non-line of sight communication. And three things we should talk about: ESM, that's collect information; electronic countermeasures; electronic countermeasures. Look at the electromagnetic space, which is actually expanded from VLF, very low frequencies, to super high frequencies. And what is being used for? Is being used for basic communication, TV and radio broadcast, and proliferation of news as a media, navigation, mobile communications, satellite communication, radio communication, Wi-Fi, GPS, radars. And at the extreme end, you're having high power microwaves and directed energy weapons. These are all part of electromagnetic spectrum. So this particular domain is also expanding and probably requires a separate understanding. And partly, actually, we saw it in during Operation Sindoor that this was essential element. So, and we'll have to think of all what we thought about ESM, ECM, and ECCM in all this kind of arenas in this expanding electromagnetic. So you would be thinking about whether spoofing or degrading your global navigation systems available to you, or then most of the weapon systems are actually dependent on some kind of a navigation. You could disrupt uplinks and downlinks. Tomorrow, ISL links between satellites could be disrupted. So this is the expanse of the old and the new domains. So the battle space is expanding. So if I were to summarize, the battle space is expanding. This expansion brings necessary complexity and demands a shift in the way military operations are conceptualized and executed. So this particular expansion of battle space is not only happening in the physical domain, which I spoke about, it's also happening in the synthetic domain, and the cyber, as well as cognitive domain. It ranges from what we all perceive, that is what we can see, what we can hear, what we smell, and what we can touch, to what lies in our imagination, especially in the synthetic and the cognitive domain. And this battle space is unrestricted, unbound, and ever expanding. It is challenging our imagination. For example, You heard about that Israeli strikes, the Pager strikes, in which they took out a large number of people in Gaza and other places. I've just explained the expanding nature of battle space, land, air, domain, everywhere. Where will you find this particular technology? It's nowhere actually, neither space nor in cyber. It's actually going through their complete logistic chain, then infiltrating and doing something different. So it's how you use that particular battle space for effects is entirely different. It is challenge your imagination. So how can we actually cope with it? First, I think there's a need to build capability for ISR and joint application of code. This, I think, is a sine qua non, absolutely essential. The convergence of domains demands a much more in-depth, persistent, and advanced capabilities for ISR. Manual modes of ISR in future may not work because of the plethora of information what you have, for which you will require technologies like artificial intelligence, machine learning, LLMs, and quantum technologies, supercomputers to develop credible ISR, and then, of course, also to help you in targeting. So this, I think, is the future because of this expanding battle space and the quantum of information which will be available or which should be available in those small options which we will map. Next, of course, is the key thing is about integration. Future warfare will demand deeper integration of platforms, sensors, and command structures. Without integration, I don't think we'll be able to fight the future war. And headquarter ideas, once I took over for integration, we had identified 9 odd verticals in which we had laid down 200 odd tasks for ourselves in which we will carry out some integration. So almost we have achieved a thing of about 50 or 60 integration. And so this integration will range from our communication networks, our air defense networks, which we were able to do before Operation Sindhu. We'll have to create structures for counter US threat, look after drones and counter drone threat. We'll have to create integrated structures for LN. I just spoke about the EM spectrum and the nature of it, which is expanding and touches all kind of domains of warfare. So special integration for such kind of even human intelligence. We can't look at intelligence in separate silos of Army, Navy, and Air Force. It has to be an integrated kind of manner. The targeting, etc., future battlefields going to be done together. We also have large number of common equipment, both of us, all the 3 services, and we also have equipment which has got very, very long ranges. So unless we are able to integrate, there'll be always a problem of IFF and fratricide in warfare. So in every kind of domain, we all know that while we have Army, Navy, Air Force, we have officers of 3 services and make out in uniform. But what happens to these domains? We are not creating a special space force or a missile force or a cyber force. So it's us. So while this integration is happening in these new domains, cyberspace, cognitive, electromagnetic domain, but similar kind of thought should be there. And we should be able to work together. That's the so having spoken about battle space, let me come on to the third part of this particular talk, which talks about domination, which I said is abstract, psychological, as well as sort of physical dimension to it. So domination through brute force is the old norm. Domination through impact and effect is a new norm. Something like a start, can call it a smart norm. And domination, as said, is to be abstract. Its effects are mainly on mind, more psychological and mental as well as physical. You see, if you look at how did we measure victory past, talk about domination of victory. We naturally associated victory with either capture of territory, number of people or equipment you killed, or a number of PWs you captured, loss of equipment, economic destruction, etc. Territory. So this is how these were the matrices of victory. And just juxtapose this with the matrices of victory which we define for ourselves as far as Operation Sindhu is concerned. So in today's Sindhu, today's warfare, it was something to do with speed and tempo of operations. No territory, no people, no very precision strikes. Effect of strikes, engagements, precision, long range. The impact was important. It created physical was less, but psychological was more. We put it very, very deep with precision. It created a huge impact psychologically. Display of sophistication and superiority. These are the matters of victory today. It's nothing to do with territory. So this is how domination is changing. And since domination, it's a notion of victory is always there in one's mind. One has to always build a superior. This has to be built along with a superior narrative. And over here, I think this job of the armed forces to create facts. These facts you can create narratives. And of course, narrative building is a multi-agency responsibility in which armed forces should also actively take part in the future. So, how do you dominate the future battlefield? If I were to summarize or I have to shortcut this, I would say there are two types of domination. One is technological domination, and second thing is about information dominance. In technological dominance, I think one should focus on precision and mass. Somewhere in matrices of revised matrices of victory, I've spoken about it. Long break precision strike operational fires will dominate the future battle space, and we also will have to put in some kind of an weight behind the attack. I'm not talking about mass. We still can't rely on 500 kg bombs, which are normally mounted on most of our long range strikes. We'll have to go for something heavier and bigger. That is for creating dead trees and effects. Autonomous warfare, including artificial intelligence, enabled drones, robotic platforms, and decision support tools, will enable ISR fusion future. Electronic warfare and predictive operation, business development of artificial warfighting stack would be essential to reduce dependency on foreign technologies and ensure strategic power. So long-range precision strikes, like mass, autonomous warfare, drones and so on, they are emerging technologies. Quantum and next generation of technology. This will all help us in what I said earlier was creating technological dominance. Of course, for information dominance, non-kinetic kind of field, we'll have to look at cognitive domain, EM spectrum, seaport, ISR transformation, cyber and EW. You can go with each subject, how do you want to develop capabilities. So let me now talk about what are the armed forces doing about this. We defined it. And as I said earlier, that anything cannot be just abstract, so it has to relate to something fact. So what are the armed forces doing about it? And so our first priority has been to create integrated structures. So as I said earlier, that we had identified for ourselves 9 verticals, 200 odd tasks, 60 of them having been completed. And if I could break down further, to talk about the infusion of futuristic techniques and technologies is essential. Network-centric warfare towards data-centric warfare or intelligentized warfare. Conceptually, we have created this particular doctrines, what kind of infrastructure do we require, identification of important responsibilities has been given, and thereafter we have a roadmap to achieve, move towards data-centric warfare. We'll have to have infrastructure for enhanced computing power, high performance computing for AI, 30 pentaflops. So this is also on, and we'll have to consider reduce latency in our communication to have a grid of LEO. Spoken about this operationalization of all this is an ongoing process, and every day we are achieving some kind of a milestone. For NFS in future, on which the 3 services networks will ride, security of that's again an ongoing kind of a process. Integration of early warning and alert resources of the 3 services, because this particular warfare is going to get important. Establishment of a joint operational coordination center among the 3 services, a geospatial agency and adaptation of IGST by all services. This is where actually will help you for this precision targeting at long range. So unless you have one geospatial agency which will not looking after one kind of a map, one kind of a structure, it will be difficult actually. So we are working towards it. And to do all this in headquarter ideas, it will need a supporting kind of a role for which there's a requirement of doctrines. This is Dot is here, he'll probably speak about it. We are also talking about future warfare courses. We're talking about creating a future operation analysis group in headquarter ideas. We're talking about issuing almost about 18 new doctrines concerned with joint warfighting in 1 or 2 years. So this is what headquarter ideas is doing on their part, and it's not only headquarter ideas, the services all themselves are also looking at what they need to do. I think on Kargil Vijay Diwas, you heard the army chief speaking about all arms Rudra Brigade. He also spoke of Bhaira battalions, etc. There about talks about drone companies and drone platoons in infantry battalions and all fighting arms. So that's a huge transformation which army is looking at. One end amongst the many other transformations which they would be looking at. It's a huge army. As far as the Indian Air Force is concerned, MUMTI, I think, is an important thing in which Air Force should be looking at, or they are already looking at. They're also exploring the options of autonomous vertical takeoff and landing platforms, something like XBAT program, and also looking at HAPS, high altitude pseudo satellites, which is a requirement not only for the Air Force but all the three services. As far as the Indian Navy is concerned, they should be looking at deck-based ship launched fixed drone, short takeoff landing capability, rotary RPAs, etc. And for autonomous weaponized boats, they could be moving in songs, or induction of autonomous surface vessels for anti-submarine warfare, surface surveillance, and for harbor sanitization. So all three services are looking at modernization of these capabilities. They're integrating this into the old structures which the services have, and finally we should be integrating it all together. All this all this what we are thinking for the future for the three services can only succeed once the roots of all this development, if it lies in Atmanirbharta. We can't be dependent on foreign technology, foreign networks, foreign platforms to do all this. We can't even say that 100% there'll be indigenous solutions, or there'll be a hybrid mix, but at some point of time we'll have to switch out to indigenous solutions. I think that is important. So finally, this pod of soldiers on one end, scientists on the other end, think tanks present here today, and the defense industry, whether it is DPSUs, MSMEs, or private industry, young entrepreneurs, they all will have to get their act together, work in business to achieve this particular end. So, okay. So now, so I've basically covered and given you a full idea as to how we are looking at the services are looking at dominating the future battle space in future, and what the services are actually doing about it. Now, also I said that I'll relate it to current operations since Sindoor just happened a couple of months back. So let me talk about it. I already spoke about the matrices of victory for are defined in a different manner as far as Sindoor is concerned. This is an operation which has not been called off, is still ongoing, and fitness of things. If I correlate my talk about domination in Sindhu's context, there has been a talk about new norms. I mean, the Prime Minister, the External Affairs Minister, everyone's been talking about new norms. And the most explicit was External Affairs Minister. In his speech in the Parliament, he mentioned these six new norms. First, he said was terrorists will not be treated as proxies. So that's a new norm, political new norm. So when you say that terrorists will not be treated as proxies, means we're looking at not only proxies but the people who support them behind. So not only the perpetrators but also the supporters. So it's not only proxies who will be dealt with. So state and non-state comes into this. That's a military implication of this first political new norm. The second new norm they said was cross-border terrorism will get an appropriate response. So this will get an appropriate response in kinetic and non-kinetic domain as far the military is concerned, military, diplomatic, economic. And this will get a definite response that is also corollary to this particular. Three is talks and terror are not possible together. They'll only be talks on terror. So that's the third political new norm. And fourth political new norm was about not yielding to nuclear blackmail. So that's being told by the Prime Minister on a number of occasions, and even the External Affairs Minister. As far as the military implication of this is concerned, that means we need to create more space for conventional operations between unconventional and this nuclear domain. And we need to challenge the Pakistani doctrine of full spectrum deterrence, which talks about deterrence at the lowest level to the highest. And finally, terror and good neighborly relations cannot coexist. Blood and water will not flow together. So this again we can derive military implications out of this, but what I will do is I'll try and define what we understand out of these military new norms as far as we are concerned, a derivative of the political new norms. I think first of all, our operational preparedness has to be of a very high order 24/7, 365 days. We have to be prepared to respond to any acts of violence by Pakistan, both state and non-state. That's the first norm. We must understand this. And the services, people in uniform must always be, keep that at the back of your mind. That's a new norm for all of us. Your operational preparedness. So I told you that very little distinction between war and peace. These things are merging. So at every point of time, service will have to be prepared. That I think is first important military norm. The second important thing is that geographical expanse will not provide safe havens to terrorists. So they cannot hide anywhere in the territory of Pakistan. They will be targeted. So we have to understand, get that kind of intelligence, and then we should have that capability to target, not only take out fixed targets, but also mobile targets at these extreme ranges. So that should be a kind of a military norm for us. Uh, Third military norm would be that greater reliance on a nuclear doctrine. I think the foundational element of a nuclear doctrine is no first use. That is essential to create that space for conventional operations, at least from the Indian side is concerned. So we should fundamentally strengthen that particular doctrine, and that's NFU is a bedrock, as I said, for creation of for conventional operations. We should be moving on to next level of jointness and integration, ever and ever. If whatever level we are, so that's a new norm for the military, because we want to fight better. We want to fight better and better tomorrow. So that means the level of integration between the three services had to be better every year than what it was happening in the past. So whether it is counter US grid, electronic warfare, intelligence generation, ISR, tracking, targeting, all this has to get integrated. So, and we all know in uniform that we are nowhere there to achieve this um, right now, but we must be doing it. And of course, last uh, norm, which I think is maintaining the technological edge over our adversary, that will always remain. That at least with the Western adversary, we should have a distinct technological edge, which was demonstrated in this Operation Sindoor as well. So I think I've spoken enough. No, I'll conclude my talk by saying that for the to dominate the future battle space, India and its armed forces must move beyond routine modernization and embrace a proactive, ingenious, innovative, adaptive vision rooted in strategic thought, technological autonomy, and doctrinal agility. The battles of tomorrow will not wait for hierarchical decision cycles or externally dependent supply chains. So it has to be largely in-house. The fusion of kinetic and non-kinetic capabilities combined with bold doctrinal shifts and multi-domain operations will be future and critical for all future operations. So that's all I had to speak today on this subject of dominating the future battle space. Thank you for your patient hearing. The seminar continues, I believe. There are next two talks also. And in this, I would like I've always advocated, in our armed forces, one that was a thing of past that if you have one genius, he would make you win a war, whether it was Alexander, Hannibal, or today you don't require one, you will require hundreds of. Means that excellence has to pervade in all sections of the armed forces, all ranks. Without this, we'll not be able to win wars. And we all have to think and be participated and be part of this particular reform. And should you feel strongly about anything, not only my office, I'm only always open to suggestion, but my subordinates, the DCs are here. They're all supposed to think about how can we do things better than what we were doing yesterday. Thank you very much for your patient hearing. Jai Hind.
Thank you, sir, for the insightful address. We now move to a significant segment of today's program, the release of two flagship publications of Sanjos. The August 2025 issue of Synergy, our biannual journal, and the inaugural edition of the General Bipin Rawat paper, conceived in the memory of our first CDS. A word about Synergy. Synergy is the premier publication of Sanjos. serving as a critical platform for debate and research on joint war fighting, integration, and doctrinal transformation. Each issue addresses contemporary challenges across military and strategic domains, fostering dialogues between the three services, institutions of the Ministry of Defense, and civil military stakeholders. First Synergy Journal was published in September 2008, and today we are going to release the 32nd issue of the Synergy Journal. This is a theme-based publication, details of which can be seen on the screen. Recent themes have included Impact of Niche Technologies on Joint War Fighting, released in August 2024, Information Warfare Impacting Joint War Fighting, February 2025, and today's issue is Emerging Contours of Future Warfare in the Tri-Services domain. This edition explores as how the character of warfare has evolved in a space, multidimensional, ambiguous, and hybrid space shaped by disruptive technologies and gray zone threats. The issue comprises 15 articles delving into topics such as multi-domain operations, cyber defense integration, unmanned systems, space warfare, and lessons from ongoing global conflicts, all contributing to the emerging discourse of joint warfighting strategy. Looking ahead, our upcoming theme for February 2026 is Going Beyond Conventional Conflicts, Nations at War. And we shall be more than happy to seek your contributions for our upcoming issue. Now a word about our new initiative in the form of Bipin Rawat paper. The Bipin Rawat paper, a flagship initiative of Sanjos, is to honor the vision and legacy of our first Chief of Defense Staff. It aims to foster strategic thought on jointness and integration in the Indian Armed Forces, encouraging forward-looking research aligned with national defense priorities. The first paper in this series, titled Manned-Unmanned Teaming, a Joint Perspective, offers a comprehensive roadmap for integrating autonomous and human platforms across domains. It emphasizes MAMT as a transformative force multiplier that enhances lethality, reduces risk, and ensures human-machine collaboration in future battlefields. This is the most apt subject now as well as in the future. We now request the dignitaries on the stage for release of Synergy Journal. General Anil Chauhan, CDS, Air Marshal Ashutosh Dikshit, CISC, Lieutenant General Vipul Singhal, DCITS DOT, Major General Dr. Ashok Kumar, DG Sanjos, and as the Deputy Editor of the journal, I feel honored to join them to release the August 2025 issue. Thank you, sir. Please stay at the stage for the release of Bipin Rawat paper. And we now request Ms. Tarini Rawat, daughter of the late General Bipin Rawat, and the authors, Captain Dr. Nitin Agarwal, Indian Navy, and Lieutenant Colonel Akshat Upadhyay, Indian Army, also to join us on stage for release of his document. We acknowledge the contribution of the third officer, Group Captain Vishal Jain, who stands posted out. Our publications are available on concessional rates outside, which can be purchased should you so desire. Thank you. We now break for high tea. We request everyone to reassemble in 30 minutes for the balance program. Thank you. The CDS has arrived. Request each one of you to rise.
Big jobs. Hi, Sanjay. Big jobs. Hi, Nalini. How are you? So, all the best for your rest. I hope. You catch us, sir?
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. We begin the post session with two important addresses. We are honored to invite Lieutenant General Vipul Singhal, AVSM, SM, the sixth dot, to speak on imbibing Indian heritage statecraft in future warfighting.
my colleagues, DCIDs, PPNFD, Tarni, the distinguished colleagues, seniors, many mentors, my devo from NDA, Jal Kulkarni is also here, so it's rather daunting. The last time I spoke in front of me was when I gave in second term NDA, the orders for some, ambush and patrolling. And I think I was rolling after that for about half an hour. I hope I can do a better job now, so similar little bit at least, somewhat better job. I've been asked to speak on imbibing uh, heritage statecraft for today's war fighting. Let me start with an anecdote, a golf joke. There was this grandfather who was playing golf with his grandson, and the grandson was 20 years old, a good golfer and very energetic. And the grandfather was moving slowly and playing golf along with him. So the grandson's ball landed at the back of a tree. So he was, looking whether I should hit below, side, what should I do? So the grandfather told him, son, when I was your age, I could hit over this tree. Have some guts. So the guy got excited. A tall tree, 40 feet tall tree, but the guy was challenged by his grandfather. So he took the stance and hit it bang into the tree. Hit the tree and went into the water. So the grandson says, sir, dad, how could you hit over this tree? He says, son, when I was your age, the tree was only 4 feet tall. So the point is that there is always, always important that we listen to old wisdom. So my talk today will talk about as to what is the relevance of Indian ancient statecraft and wisdom to today's war fighting. India is not merely a geographical entity. It is a civilization state forged over millennia through deep philosophical inquiry, complex social structures, and a rich strategic tradition. As the CDS also said, today's global security environment is characterized by blurred thresholds of conflict, cyber warfare, information manipulation, and economic coercion. Therefore, it is worth asking, How relevant are ancient Indian texts and doctrines to modern warfare and strategy, and how can we adapt these to today's wars? In my short talk today, I will attempt to answer these. From the writings of the sage Vyasa in Mahabharata to Kautilya and many others in between, Indian sages, saints, kings have enunciated many principles, doctrines, and methods of statecraft and warfare. Let's take the Mahabharata first. The Mahabharata is not merely a mythological narrative, it is a multidimensional discourse on dharma, power, leadership, and war. Sri Krishna's counsel to Arjuna is not spiritual, it is strategic. In the moral fog of war, Krishna offers clarity: act with purpose, be anchored in dharma, and be detached from personal gain. The Mahabharata also talks of sthit prajna. Sthit means steady, and prajna means person. It says a steady person. It is a quality every military leader must embody: calm in crisis, focused amid chaos, unshaken by triumph or despair. Arjuna's initial paralysis stemmed not from fear but from moral ambiguity. Krishna's answer was not vengeance but clarity of duty. The war itself demonstrates kinetic and non kinetic warfare, psychological operations, narrative control, decoys, and espionage. The Mahabharata distinguishes between Dharam Yudh and Kuta Yudh or Kut Yudh, that is, righteous war versus actual war or deceitful war, echoing modern debates around hybrid conflict, disinformation, and the ethical dilemmas posed by autonomous systems. You will recall from the Mahabharata that when when Dronacharya was absolutely massacring the Pandav army, Krishna thought of a deceitful action where he told Yudhishthira. Yudhishthira was the man who was the scion of dharma and who always fought righteously. He told him to announce that that Ashwathama has died. Ashwathama was also the son of Drona. Yudhishthira actually didn't want to do it. So he told him, you say Yashwatama Hato Hata, and follow it up with saying that I don't know whether the elephant or the man. When the first sentence was said by Yudhishthira, Arjun started blowing asked the whole army to blow the conch. So the second part got drowned in. And when Drona heard this, he gave up. He was so distraught that his son had died. He left his arms, left everything, and thereafter he was killed. It was a classical case of fake news, being disarming the enemy. So I think lessons like this are very relevant to today's warfare. The other great epic is Arthashastra. It remains one of the most advanced pieces of literature on strategy and governance. His doctrine of Gudha Yudh or covert warfare and Sunim Yudh or silent warfare is very relevant to today's cyber attacks and the notion of gray zone that we have. Kautilya's mandala theory, which all of you are aware of, the enemy's enemy is your enemy and so on, is a flexible alliance strategy, advocating for a balance of power and recognizing that today's enemy could be tomorrow's ally. He underscores the value of shaping perceptions, co-opting allies, and fragmenting adversaries internally, all cornerstones of contemporary information operations and influence campaigns. Kautilya also enunciates very clearly that Shakti, that is power, Yukti, that is strategy, and Niti, that is ethics. They are all three multidimensional tools to be used together for national interest. So Shakti, Yukti, and Niti, it is a beautifully crafted doctrine, and this part is worth reading. So across India's strategic success, there has been a blend of philosophical and operational innovation. And if you look back, there are instances where through the history, various kingdoms, empires, kings have used some of the doctrines either successfully or unsuccessfully. The Mauryas and Guptas applied Kautilyan statecraft to create enduring deterrence, under Chanakya. The Cholas expanded this classical doctrine into the maritime domain. But the failure of Prithviraj Chauhan in 1192 at Khanwa against Muhammad Ghori was an example of not adapting to technological innovation. As you know, in 1191, in the first battle, he defeated Ghori. Ghori came back after 1 year, 1192, with a new technique. He got horses and used maneuver Prithviraj Chauhan though had a larger army but continued with the same tactics. And thereafter, so lack of adaptation of the tactic led to the defeat. Similarly, in 1527, in the Battle of Khanwa, it was Rana Sanga who lost to Babur. Rana Sanga had an army of over 80,000 troops. Babur had about 12 to 15,000. But he used artillery, as you are aware. So technological innovation actually won the day for him, which Rana Sanga failed to adapt to. And in fact, his whole lot of there were a lot of kingdoms which are combined with him to do that. So therefore, what does it remind us? That you have to adapt the technology. Shivaji's synthesis of asymmetric warfare and governance marked a revival of guerrilla warfare. In 1971, I think India used the technique of Shatrubodh and having diplomacy around, and thereafter maneuver very well. And this led to the victory that happened. So India's strategic heritage, I would say, can be viewed from two different perspectives. Some theories and doctrines are relevant at the strategic level, while some are more useful at the operational level. At the strategic level, we have Raj Dharma, that is, duties of the king. Shatru Bodh, that means you must assess the enemy before attacking him. Thereafter, we have the Mandala theory, I've talked about it. Thereafter, we have the Shadgunya. The Shadgunya is interesting. The Shadgunya talks about 6 diplomatic options that a nation has, which are Sandhi or alliance, Vigraha or war, Asana or neutrality, Yana or march on the enemy. Yan means march. Or Sanshreya, seeking protection. If you are weak, then seek protection of other larger ally. Vigraha, I already talked about it. And thereafter, Dvai Bhava, which means you have a dual policy. If you have to balance the balance of power, possibly you can see this happening today in world global alliances, where you have, rather than having a constant alliance with one particular bloc, you have issue based alliances. For example, India has an alliance in Quad with a certain number of countries, and you have an alliance in SCO and BRICS with countries possibly which are inimical to that country. So issue based alliances, and this particular concept of was alive at that time, and I think if we follow that, we can navigate today's difficult geopolitical environment. It also talks about upayas, which you know about Sam, Dam, Dhan, Bhed, Kuta Yudh, secret war. And there is also the concept of Matsnyaya. Matsnyaya is another interesting concept. It talks about the law of the fish. And you know, Matsya is fish. Where it says that if there is anarchy in the world or in a kingdom, and the ruler is not strong enough, or the rule of law doesn't prevail, then the big fish will eat the small fish. It is relevant at the state level and at the interstate level. And you can see it happening today. That if there are some powerful forces, they are without qualms, they are able to swallow these so-called smaller nations or smaller fish with nothing much that can be done if the rule of law or international rule of law doesn't prevail. So how to navigate that becomes important. At the operational level, we have certain other doctrines which talk about war fighting per se. There is a doctrine called Vyuhu. Vyuhu means formations. Not so relevant today because it was more about cavalry and the horse formations. Then you have the Chaturanga structure. The Chaturanga structure is combined arms. In fact, it's very interesting that the Chaturanga talks about the 4 elements which combine together to give you a combined arms concept, quite akin to today's joint war fighting, or even combined arms what CDS spoke about. It talks about the Rath, the Ashwa, the chariot, that is the chariot, the Gaja, the Ashwa, and the Padati. That means the elephant, the chariot, the infantry, and the cavalry. And each has a specific role. The chariot is supposed to provide mobility to commanders. The Gaja, or the elephant, is supposed to provide shock action and shock and awe. The Ashwa, or the horse, is supposed to provide mobility to the soldiers to get behind and on the flank of the enemy. And the Padati, or the infantry, is supposed to have siege areas and also hold fortifications. And then it describes as to how these 4 should be used in the combined arms. Quite relevant to us to be expanded further to include multi-domain operations and so on, and jointness and integration possibly. So with this as the background as to what have been our doctrines, we have to see as to how we can adapt this to modern warfare. Modern warfare, as even CDS brought out, consists of multi-domain, hybrid, grey zone, information warfare, and so on. So let me distill 6 enduring lessons from our heritage, applicable to current and future conflicts. The mandala theory must adapt from geographical proximity to interest-based networking, and network mandala must form the foundation of our future interaction. I've already talked about it. That means have issue-based alliances. Secondly, the appreciation of adversaries' capabilities and capacity requires a reimagining of Shatrubodh, maybe call it Shatrubodh 2.0, wherein you integrate techint, human, oscent, and so on, and thereafter have a comprehensive picture of the enemy. The third relates to strategic leadership. Krishna did not wield a sword, yet was the battle's most decisive factor. Modern commanders must be more than tacticians. They must be ethical strategists, balancing duty with moral clarity. Indian strategic culture has long emphasized the convergence of Raj Dharma with national interest. Fourthly, Indian statecraft employed the four-way strategy or the upayas, that is Sam, Dam, Dhand, Ved. You are aware of it. These remain valid to today across diplomacy, deterrence, and narrative management. We must use kinetic force judiciously, but employ cognitive influence continuously. So, kinetic force may be used judiciously at a point of time when you need to use it, like it happened in Op Sindoor. But cognitive influence and cognitive warfare must remain continuous all the time, which is, I think, what is happening also. Sindoor was a good example of using kinetic power judiciously and precisely. We also need to look at jointness and integration from the perspective of adapting essential tenets of literary heritage. I already spoke about the Chaturanga doctrine, again is part of the Harsh Charita and also Arthashastra, about how combined arms need to be combined together to fight modern warfare. However, there needs to be a balance between absorbing concepts of yore to future warfare. Two aspects need to be emphasized. The first is literalism, or taking words too literally. For example, Arthashastra should not be read as a technical manual, a tactical manual, since there was no cyber domain or swarm drones. Literalism leads to obsolescence. That means literal interpretation of doctrine. The second falls on the other end of the spectrum, that is amnesia, or dismissing classical doctrine or classical wisdom as pre-modern folklore. That is also not good. This ignores enduring truths about fear, honor, and interest, which are core drivers in any strategic equation. There is therefore a need to reimagine rather than replicate. The key lies in creative adaptation that extracts enduring principles while reimagining the application. The Shadgunyas remain relevant not as six rigid options, but as a reminder that strategic flexibility requires multiple tools. The various doctrines that talk about formations, I talked about the combined arms, have to be adapted to today's system. To conclude, I would say finally, firstly, there are few quandaries that persist to this day and age. Let me pose three of them to this august audience today. These are questions that straddle ethics and operations and have posed challenges to thinkers of ancient times as they do to practices of today. First is, can we retain ethical clarity in grey zone conflicts? The classical distinction between Dharma Yudh and Kuta Yudh that suggests that while methods may vary with technology, moral boundaries must evolve rather than disappear. Ancient doctrines drew clear lines between righteous war and unrighteous war. Today, the deep fakes, AI, psyops, automated targeting, these lines are completely blurred. So where does righteous war start? Where does deceitful war begin or end? Those are blurred boundaries today. And I think when these large ethical questions rise, then we can look to our ancient text to provide some moral clarity. As Bhishma's counsel to Yudhishthir on his deathbed was, power without virtue corrodes both the victor and the state. We are seeing flashes of this around the world today. The second question is, when does Rashtra Dharma override Raj Dharma? Which means, when does national interest, which is supreme, does it override, say, political expediency? Or righteous war, like I said, if can the right to defend the nation mean that you can do unrighteous things. If a high value enemy target is located amidst civilians in a foreign city, and a strike would eliminate a grave threat but would also cause collateral damage, is it ethical to proceed? Does the duty to protect one's nation, Rashtra Dharma, justify deliberate harm to non-combatants? Or does the obligation to uphold just conduct of war, Raj Dharma, demand restraint? How do we weigh the morality of the action that prevents future atrocities against the immorality of immediate damage, even at the cost of military advantage? Again, these are questions which keep arising. We saw in Op Sindoor also, our adversary did do actions which was against basic ethics of bombarding civilian areas and so on. We deterred from doing it in spite of great provocation. So I think if the if the if the ancient texts and philosophy guide us, and Bhishma's words about virtue uh, guide us without being too tied to it, the answers may come. Finally, can psychological warfare respect personal dignity? Is it ethically permissible to weaponize personal and private information about enemy commanders, such as family details, medical records, and personal images, to destabilize adversary morale in leadership? While Gupta Yudh and Maya permit deception and covert operations, does Dharma Yudh place boundaries on psychological attacks that intrude into the familiar or the sacred? Where do we draw the ethical line between strategic persuasion and psychological violation? I have no answers here, and neither am I attempting to give them. I will leave it to this august audience to ponder these questions and see how our ancient wisdom answers these. In conclusion, I would say India is a civilization that did not just survive history, it shaped it. Our forefathers waged war not for plunder but for the preservation of dharma. Let us not reduce their insights to mythology. Let us read them as manuals of strategy, leadership, and resilience. Victory in the 21st century will not be judged by flags on foreign soil, but by the resilience of our society, the clarity of our strategy, and the power of our ideas. Let us build a new Indian way of warfare, guided by our heritage, tested in our terrain, and fused with our technology. Let the world not just see our strength, but understand our depth. The time has come not just to make in India, but to think in India. Thank you. Jai Hind.
Thank you, sir, for the very valuable insights. We now invite Air Marshal Ashutosh Dikshit, AVSM, VM, VSM, CISC, and Chairman Sanjos to deliver his address on the topic Urgency in Tri-Service Reforms.
General Singhal, Deceased Dot, Major General Ashok Kumar, DG Sanjos, distinguished officers, veterans, colleagues, and friends. It is indeed an honor and privilege for me to address this year's annual Trident lecture, first annual lecture we are starting. We have gathered here not only to reflect on the past or analyze the present, but also to look ahead, prepare for the future that is arriving faster than we once imagined. A future where battles will be fought not only on land, sea, and air, but also in space, cyber realm, and in the cognitive domain, as was amply covered in the morning. Today, I wish to speak on a subject for which we are directly responsible as headquarter IDS, and that is tri-service reforms. And I just want to touch upon what is the urgency for undertaking these tri-service reform and how we are going to go about doing it. What we are going to talk is not cosmetic changes, but fundamental transformation. Inter-service cooperation, uh, which has remained a formality for some time now, we want to change it into genuine integration as a strategic imperative. This is not about ticking off reforms. It is about getting a new mindset working in jointness, unity, and readiness of defense forces. And above all, we are not waiting for the right time, because the right time has already arrived and it is now. So you will ask me, why now? Why this urgency which I am trying to put across? As you have seen, the world is not standing still, neither are our adversaries. The tempo of change has quickened, and the very character of warfare has shifted. More importantly, there is era of constant confrontation. In the morning, CDS highlighted that where peace and war are no longer binary. You can call it absence of peace, or whatever word you want to give it. In this environment, being prepared is not enough. We must be agile, anticipatory, and joint. So there is a transition in warfare which is happening from conventional platform-centric models to fluid, networked, multi-domain frameworks. Our adversaries are investing not only in conventional battle equipment, but in satellites, algorithms, and influence operations, which we saw in ample amount. Technology is not an enabler anymore. It is a warfighting domain, or rather a new type of warfighting domain. That is RMA-3, which was talked in the morning. The recent Operation Sindoor, in many ways, has been a watershed movement for us. Atmanirbharta and Make in India initiatives has paid good dividends during this operation. Be it surface to air weapons, long range BrahMos, all these performed as designed and envisaged in actual combat. Long range precision weapons were the backbone of targeting during Op Sindoor. Going forward, capability and capacity building in this area will supplement future offensive doctrines. Long range standoff weapons have fused battlefields into a perpetual continuum. Therefore, the modern day war fighting concepts need joint doctrines to enmesh various facets of joint and integrated application of force. We need to shorten the OODA loop, which plays a crucial role in executing dynamic and time sensitive targeting, which is going to be the new thing uh, experimented by us. We have taken various steps in evolving joint doctrines, also towards utilizing space based assets, cyber warfare, information warfare capabilities. We are doing considerable work in future application and integrated employment of conventional missile force, geospatial intelligence, and drones. To be future ready, we need a focused and integrated approach towards force application. So this is why we need to do these reforms. Now we have to examine how we are going to do these reforms. If urgency is required, it is reality. The integration is our answer. Our past effort revolved around coordination, which were very well meaning actually. Occasionally they were effective also, but rarely transformative. The time has come to move beyond cooperation by convenience and embrace integration by design. That journey has already begun, as was covered by CDS in the morning. Uh, we spoke of jointness for decades. When we joined India, we said this is a joint training institute. Since then, we are talking of jointness. Uh, and in this hall, a lot of people have served in joint postings, participated in tri-service exercises, etc. But if you look into yourself, you will realize that the coordination has been more ceremonial than operational. This is what we need to change. Jointness is not about conducting a war game together. It is about think, plan, decide, and fight as a single force. What does this mean is that our doctrines have to be shared doctrines, our training pipelines have to be unified, our platforms have to be interoperable, our logistics has to be integrated. We should be working on a common operational picture, and above all, a shared culture of mission first thinking rather than service first thinking. True integration will require us to go beyond comfort zones. This is the most difficult thing. It will demand humility, open minds, and willingness to put national interest above service identities. It is not easy what I am saying to do, but it is necessary. That is why I am saying it. Building on the foundation of integration, we now turn to the most visible and structural manifestation, the structural reform which we will do. While integration should be the overarching philosophy, the structural reform which we are thinking of are the operational architecture to bring this philosophy to life. This shift marks not just an administrative reform but a profound change how we conceive, plan, and execute military operations. So, what we want to do is bring unity of effort to operational planning, eliminate redundancy, and enable faster decision making. We want to build with joint warfighting concepts, real-time interoperability, seamless ISR sharing, and coordinated fires and maneuver. Also, it is required to have a capability development built around this theory. We must not only reorganize existing assets but build future capabilities with joint application in mind. Long range precision fire, cyber weapons, space situation awareness tools, all this should be designed with cross domain impact. So, what I'm saying is that we should stop thinking in terms of individual services and start thinking in terms of one Indian armed force. And that is what IDS is trying to do. Now, this structural reform cannot succeed without cultural reform. That begins with how we educate, train, promote, and also reward our personnel. Because it is finally people-centric approach. Our institutions like NDA, DSSC, CDM, NDC, they should be crucibles of jointness. The curriculum we have already shifting from single service centric approach to integrated approach, cognitive warfare, national security strategy, etc. We are trying to expose the officers early and often to joint environments, beginning from their foundational military education. Cross postings, we have started joint instructional tenures and simulation based joint training modules have become mandatory part of officer development. Furthermore, a unified framework is being designed where achievements in tri-service commands, joint operations, or interagency assignments are given equal, if not greater, weightage during promotions. We must also reform our career paths. Today, joint tenures are sometimes seen as career detours. That mindset must go. Serving in a joint environment should be seen as a fast track and not a side track. Policies must evolve to incentivize these assignments with competitive career progression matrices, professional development opportunities, and recognition for joint excellence. Basically, our future leadership should think jointly, speak jointly, and act jointly. Only then can we lead jointly and fight next combat jointly. Now, what is the role that is being played by headquarter IDS in driving integration? Some of it was told by citizens in the morning. We are no longer a node of coordination, which we were there earlier, and we are evolving into a central pillar of strategic integration. We are repositioning ourselves as a forward-looking, capability-driven institution that works across the services to deliver coherence, operational synergy, and strategic agility. So the expanding role is aligning long-term capability development with evolving national security objective. We are harmonizing procurement plans to reduce duplication. We are driving indigenous research and development with cross-service applications in mind. And we are supporting operational commands with integrated intelligence, surveillance, and planning tools. Now, in parallel, the CDS plays a unique and pivotal role in this transformation. Beyond being the senior-most military advisor, CDS is the principal architect of jointness who sets directions, ensure accountability, and guides reforms with a national perspective. That said, neither the CDS nor headquarter IDS can bring about this transformation in isolation. The success lies in active ownership and commitment of all ranks, all arms, and all institutions of our armed forces. Basically, this must be a whole of forces effort. While the framework for integration is being put in place, true transformation requires us to confront the friction points that still exist within the system. It is only by acknowledging these and taking them head on we can move from aspiration to action and from design to delivery. Now, let me take a moment to address few persistent realities. First is this bureaucratic process, though well intentioned, sometimes hinder timely decision making. Where file movement to decision making, lot of bottlenecks are there. We are trying to see that it can be made faster. Our procurement cycles are too long. By the time some systems are inducted, the technology is already behind us. And we have to now become technologically superior to our adversary. So this also we need to modify. Inter-service turf battles waste energy and delay progress of almost every reform which one tries to do. We must shift from service-specific posturing to a culture where joint capability takes precedence over individual legacy. Critical capabilities in cyber space and AI are underdeveloped, which we need to develop at a war footing. We do not always speak with one voice when it matters, whether in planning, posture, or public communication. Fragmented messaging weakens deterrence. Joint planning must lead to joint signaling internally and externally. It also helps in effective narrative building. A lot of emphasis is being laid on strategic communication nowadays. If we are to truly change our course and rise to meet the demands of a new strategic era, we must begin by facing these challenges squarely and tackling them with unity, urgency, and resolve. Now, these are our internal challenges. This is only one part of the journey. The other lies in recognizing that the future we are preparing for is no longer on the horizon, it is already arrived. So let us not think of jointness as a theoretical concept. It is being tested every day in real missions under real pressure, as was made evident during Op Sindoor. So what do we need to do? Let me place before you a clear and actionable roadmap. Empower headquarter IDS and CDS with greater planning authority and execution oversight to ensure coherence among tri-service operations. This is foremost. Institutionalize joint training and career progression across all ranks to make jointness a lived professional experience. Establish joint logistic hubs and shared maintenance framework to drive efficiency, agility, and self-reliance. We have made some progress in this. Invest in cross domain technologies, AI, space-based assets, quantum encryption, designed from inception for integrated application, which we are working very rapidly in this area. We have to also consolidate cyber defense, information warfare, and strategic communication under one integrated umbrella. We are trying to set up a defense a strategic communication agency. It is on short finals. Foster a culture of jointness within all training institutes from NDA to NDC. We have to have joint war games, faculty exchange, and modernize our war gaming, simulation, and red teaming capabilities. Basic idea is that we need to now shift from planning for reforms to implementing the reforms. That is time has come, and that is what is the urgency for reforms. So to conclude, let me say that we are not lacking in thought or intelligence or talent or vision. What we now must embody is the collective resolve to move forward, not as separate services, but as one unified force, uh, which is driven by purpose, shaped by jointness, and committed to the idea of India as a leading global power. Also, we have to remember this is not the age of incremental change. This is the age of bold transformation. In this age, victory will belong not just to the side that has the most firepower, but to the side that is fastest smartest, and most integrated. So the future battle space should find us not as services operating in parallel, but as a single instrument of national power. Thinking together, training together, fighting together. Let our structures reflect our strategy, institutions reflect our ambition, and our unity reflect our strength. It is for the history to record this movement, not as the time we recognized the need for reform, but as the time we actually delivered it. So let me end my speech by saying this: the time is now, the call is clear, the path ahead holds no place for fear. With vision bold and spirit strong, together we rise from where we belong. Thank you very much. Jai Hind.
Thank you, sir, for that thought provoking address. To conclude today's successful first annual Trident lecture, I invite DG Senjos to deliver the vote of thanks.
On behalf of Team Senjos, I thank each one of you to be part of our journey which has gone by and being witness to the journey on which we are now progressing, for which we have set our tone today in form of our annual Trident lecture and launch of the Bipin Rawat paper. I am grateful to all these three wonderful speakers, CDS, CISC and DCIS dot, who have unfolded the future battle space, brought out as to how the our ancient wisdom can be dovetailed in our future war fighting, and also as to what is the urgency of tri-services reforms. You could not have found a more candid views, from somebody else except those who are holding these responsibilities. I'm also grateful to each one of you who have taken out your time to attend this event, because I will repeat my strong belief that whenever you give some time to some event, actually you are giving that part of your life to that entity and that organization. So thank you very much. I will fail in my duty if I don't thank the Executive Council of Senjos and headquarter IDS, with a special mention of IDU, who have helped us to shape and in the conduct of this event. So look forward to you sometime on some date, August next year. With that note, thank you very much once again. Over to the MC for final words.
Ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to the end of today's program. Thank you for your participation and contribution in making this lecture a success. Since this is our annual event, we shall meet again on some date in August 2026. We are also happy to share that Sanjos will be conducting Ran Samvad on 26th and 27th August 2025 at Army War College, Mao, in coordination with Indian Army. To participate, you can register through the QR code displayed on the screen. Jai Hind.